This is Liz Colburn, host of The Morning Uplift. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. This is Annie Scogan, and I'm one of the co-hosts of Head Over Heels Pageant Talk here on Public House Media. Thank you for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come out and check my show, Head Over Heels Pageant Talk, where we talk about all things involved with the Miss America organization and both myself and my other co-host Jordan Butler's experiences within it. A new show comes out bi-monthly, so don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so that you never miss an episode of Head Over Heels Pageant Talk. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Everybody, welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy and you probably are too. This is Emily, and I'm here today with Elisabeth again. It's great to have you back, and we're here to talk nerdy to you.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be back, and I'm really excited for this week's particular episode because it's something I'm particularly passionate about.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and you are super into this, and it's something, honestly, that I have seen one episode of, and if you read the title to the episode, which you probably have, you'll know that we're going to be talking about Supernatural. So I've only seen one episode of Supernatural, but Elisabeth, tell us what you've seen.
Well, Supernatural was one of those things where over the years I knew that I would like it, but for one reason or another, I never got a chance to sit down and watch it. And finally last year, I had the opportunity to. And so I think in about June, I sat down and started watching it, and I finished all 12 available seasons in about a month and a half or so, give or take.
That's a lot of Supernatural.
And before that, I was even reading the fan fiction. So I read the fan fiction, then saw the series, and then I started writing the fan fiction myself. So
oh my, that's awesome.
That, so once I actually I really got into it.
Yeah. So that just goes to show how awesomely passionate you are about Supernatural. So I think we have the right person when we want to give you guys a beginner's guide to Supernatural. If somehow you're nerdy and have not seen Supernatural, this is a good place to start. Me personally, I got really freaked out after watching the first episode, so I decided to not watch anymore. I'm just not a person for horror or that sort of world. But, if that's you, that's perfectly fine, so go on and have at it. But for me, it's just not my thing. But what we're going to do then is talk about what it's about, a little bit of the background of the lore about the supernatural world and how things work there. And then we're going to go over the main characters and a few minor characters that come up often. Not giving away spoilers, just giving away, things that you need to know that maybe will spark your interest in the show, or maybe will be the final, all right, here we go, I can actually watch this now. Maybe you've been on the fence about it, but then this, we'll give you enough information to tip you either way. So, yeah. So tell us, Elisabeth, now that since you've seen all 12 available seasons, and they're starting their 13th season now, right?
We are actually about in the middle of the 13th season.
Okay.
They premiered it last year, and they just came back from the mid-season hiatus. I haven't gotten the chance to watch the latest episode because my son was giving me a bit of a headache the other day, but I've already read the rundown, so I already know what
you already know what happens, but you're going to watch it anyways because you're dedicated like that.
Exactly. I'm the kind where I love to read the spoilers, but I still watch the episodes. I don't know. I'm just kind of odd like that.
I'm kind of like that too. My husband is absolutely zero spoilers about anything ever because he doesn't want to ruin the hype, And I'm I don't care because he'll watch ahead of me in some things. The biggest thing he's done this with is Star Trek. He's watched ahead and watched basically all of the episodes of Star Trek that exist, except for the most recent one of Star Trek Discovery. But he's watched all of them, and I'm like, you know what? I don't care if I watch them with you, because I'll probably go back and watch them myself anyways. Yeah. So, like, personally, like, I don't care necessarily about spoilers, especially if it's something I know I'm already gonna continue watching. So,
and the show in general, I mean, obviously there's a lot of different elements to it, but I mean, really, when you boil it all down, every single arc, it all comes back to family. It comes back to these characters who have banded together. They're there for each other. They support each other. They help each other out. I mean, obviously it starts with the actual blood family of the Winchesters, but later on it kind of expands to other characters who are kind of adopted in as family. One of the characters, Bobby Singer, actually says, you know, family don't end in blood. And that really applies, you know, later in the seasons where the family kind of spreads out, and it includes, you know, different people coming in and, you know, offering help, and then, you know, the family offering help to them. That's just it's a huge part of it. It includes the motivations for pretty much everything that the characters do in the show.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Even though we know the show is called Supernatural, so it has a theme of, you know, it's got like a world surrounding it, but underneath all of that, it has the core of what it's about. And that's actually really cool that it plays on the family aspect of things, where everybody's there for each other, and even though they're not blood family, they actually are able to, you know, they know they need to help each other out, because who else do they have?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's cool. That's cool. I like that. All right, so that's like the bare bones boiled down version. Now, it's called Supernatural for a reason then. So tell us about the realm, the world of Supernatural, the Supernatural universe, I guess we can say.
Yeah, there's obviously, you know, all kinds of different creatures in Supernatural, and they actually draw from a lot of different mythologies and lore from a lot of different sources. Obviously, angels and demons, they kind of draw more from the Christian aspect, but they also draw, you know, stuff from like vampires, werewolves, even other little more obscure ones like jinns, like Rougarous, Kitsunes. There's all kinds of different. Yeah,
I've heard of Sunni actually, but other than that, none of the other ones. But,
yeah, there are all kinds of different monsters that they've kind of drawn from different sources, and there's all kinds of different rules about them.
Okay.
For example, like ghosts, obviously, salt is something that they can't stand. They actually have a shotgun full of rock salt that they can shoot at a ghost, and it will temporarily stop the ghost from coming at them. If you lie a salt line around you, then the ghost can't actually cross over the salt line, so you're protected in that way. Another way to kind of prevent a ghost from coming at you is using iron, but the only way to actually get rid of a ghost is to actually find wherever the body is buried, or like some personal effect of theirs, and burn it with salt. So that way, the ghost is actually taken care of completely.
Interesting. So it sounds like it's a familiar lore about the supernatural that like people are already kind of familiar with, like the upside down star thing and drawing a salt line and that. So like the symbols and things like that are some things that we're already familiar with, especially if you're familiar with you know, if you're superstitious about the ghosts and that sort of thing, you know, you might already be familiar with some of those things.
Yeah, they kind of do blur the line a little bit. And I think that's a great way that they've kind of incorporated, you know, real world kind of examples, more or less, and kind of taken it into this world. So it's like almost stretching it to where it could be believable potentially.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, which is a good thing for a show to do.
It kind of plays on your knowledge. Yeah, it kind of plays on the knowledge that you have.
Exactly. So it's like, oh, whoa, wait, I have heard about that before. What if... Oh, boy. Yeah. Exactly. So that's good for like this type of show to get the
Yeah.
watchers a little bit more involved. That's cool.
Hmm.
Awesome. All right. So you did tell me, we were talking earlier, and you said that there are other rules about like the angels and the demons and other
Hmm.
things in the whole in the universe as well. So let's talk
Yeah.
about those ones.
All right. Well, angels and demons, they don't, their true forms are actually not human. Demons usually appear as a cloud of smoke, and that is usually related to the color of their eyes. So there's different kinds of demons. The most common being black-eyed, and so they'll
Okay.
appear as their true form will appear as black smoke. But if the demon is, say, a red-eyed demon, like the character Crowley, then he'll actually appear as a cloud of red smoke. And what they can do is, as long as a person is not wearing anti-possession jewelry or doesn't have an anti-possession tattoo, they can inhabit anybody at any time, just at will. Now,
Okay. Well, that's a
angels,
little freaky.
yeah, just a little.
From my perspective, like, being one that's not a huge fan of like that whole realm of stuff, I'm like, okay, I kind of want to wear special jewelry all the time.
And the thing about angels is their true form is that a human can't look at their true form without their eyes being burned from their skulls. So if they want to come down and interact with humans in any way, they have to take a human vessel. However, unlike demons who can just basically possess anybody, um, aside from the anti-possession jewelry,
Mm-hmm.
an angel has to actually ask permission to inhabit that person, for one. And for
Oh,
two,
okay.
they have to be careful about who they inhabit because they can't just inhabit anybody that gives permission. Usually and this is discussed later in the seasons, usually there is a line of, um, of people that certain angels can possess.
Oh, like is it
Um,
a certain family line that they can?
yes,
Okay. Hmm.
yes. And
Interesting.
they can kind of possess some other people, but their vessels will basically burn up and die if
Oh,
they don't possess somebody who is in their line. So,
gotcha.
and one of the characters, um, he actually possesses a couple of different people from that family line. So that's going to be interesting to discuss when we get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so there's rules differentiating the angels from the demons.
Hmm.
Um, Now, when I first started watching, when I first watched the episodes that I've seen,
Hmm.
they talked about hunting or hunters, and that made me think of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of thing, where like they're like in the know about it.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of similar to that. Basically, the whole world is full of these supernatural creatures, and most of them are not very nice. And they end up, harming or killing people. And so hunters will keep a lookout for, like these odd news stories that kind of, where things just don't always click and they can kind of tell that something is going on and they'll go and investigate and they'll take care of whatever supernatural entity is, harming this town.
Okay.
So, and it can be, any number of things, like I said before, like a ghost, it could be like a shapeshifter or a vampire or a werewolf or even a demon. And they'll just come in and they'll be just basically take care of the problem and then be on their way. It's kind of portrayed as a life that's not exactly ideal because, you're kind of just on the road a lot.
Yeah.
Um, you don't really get a whole lot of thanks for what you do because nobody can really know what you do.
Gotcha.
Um, but it's
Well,
just,
yeah, because
that,
if
it needs to be done. So
yeah.
they take it upon themselves to do it.
Yeah. Well, and is that kind of a situation where if they develop too many personal relationships, it could put
Hmm.
the other people at risk too?
Exactly.
Okay.
So they have to
Yeah.
be very careful about who they, befriend and who they bring in because, it could end up being dangerous, just as dangerous from them for associating with
Yeah,
a hunter.
exactly. Yeah, and whether they know that they're a hunter or not, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Because, that doesn't always matter to a supernatural creature who's bent on revenge.
Right, exactly. Especially if it's like a demon who doesn't care who they possess. They're
Hmm.
just like, I'm gonna come after you. Oh,
Yeah.
boy. Gotcha. Okay. Well, that is good to know. Okay. So do you have anything else we need to know about the supernatural world before we find out the main characters and maybe some other ones?
Well, there is just basically one little thing. It's basically like how to tell if somebody is possessed or is a supernatural being, because, obviously if somebody is possessed by a demon, you can't tell. And there's also another type of creature called a shapeshifter. They can take on somebody's form, and, just looking at them, you would never know. But obviously there are a couple ways you can tell if they are legit or not. As far as demons go, you can use holy water, and if they get splashed with it, if they ingest it, however, they obviously will burn. So you can tell by the smoke that they are not human. For shapeshifters, it's silver. If they touch silver or if they're cut with silver, then it burns them. And then obviously, you can tell that's not a human, because a human is not going to react like that.
Right.
There's several little supernatural beings that you can tell, if they're on the up and up or if they're actual humans, just by kind of testing out the vessel or the person there. Okay. And those kind of tests, they won't actually hurt that person. That's kind of, the whole point. They don't want to actually hurt the person. They just want to know and make sure that they're really real.
Right. Yeah. That they are who you think. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, then I think we're ready to start talking characters, which at this point, I mean, they're 12 and a half seasons in. I think at least most of us have heard of the main characters, but maybe not exactly how they're all connected and that sort of thing. Yeah. So let's go over the main ones and then a few of the minor ones that come back frequently.
Alrighty. Well, one of the main ones is obviously Dean Winchester. He's the oldest Winchester brother, and he actually was 4 years old when when they lost their mom. So he does still know his mom, and he knew kind of life before hunting. But after that, John took his father, John took his sons on the road and kind of, immersed them in this hunting life. So he's been, kind of bred and raised in this life, just hunting and, killing monsters and, just helping his dad. He's kind of the foot soldier of the two Winchester brothers. He's, the one that John will always go to and trust to do whatever he needs to do. He's kind of considered to be emotionally constipated. and
he doesn't let his feelings out.
Yes, and he's occasionally an alcoholic depending on the circumstances, but he is loyal to a fault, and he will do anything for his family, especially Sam. Sam was, one of the things that his father always said was always look out for Sam. And, even though they're adults, that devotion still continues into adulthood.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so Dean, and what actor plays Dean?
That would be Jensen Ackles.
Okay, yeah.
Who some of you might know from the show Dark Angel, and I think it was Days of Our Lives. He was also in one of those major soaps as well.
Days of Our Lives was my dad's jam back in the day. He would watch that every lunch. He would come home for lunches. And so I remember, during the summer, he would come home for his lunch, and he'd put on Days of Our Lives. I'm like, okay, whatever, Dad. Anyways. All right, so Jensen Ackles plays Dean Winchester.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then the next one is Sam Winchester. He's the middle Winchester child, and he's the youngest son of Mary Winchester. John did go and have another son with somebody else. But of the children he had with Mary, it's just Dean and Sam. And so Sam's the youngest one. He was actually only 6 months old when he got thrust into the whole hunting life. And
well, then even that makes sense if he's the youngest, because then his mom would have died, and then there would be no more chance for her to have a child. So, okay, that makes sense.
And but even though he was raised as a hunter, he always kind of wanted something a little more, and he actually broke away and managed to go to college. He actually got a free ride from Stanford. He finished his undergrad, and he was actually going to go to law school, and then he kind of got roped back into the hunting life.
Gotcha. Okay, so he was trying to have his own life, but then...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And out of the main characters, I mean, obviously there's tons and tons of recurring
Mm-hmm.
characters. Some at some points might be considered major characters, but at this point, the only other main character I would really consider is Castiel.
Okay.
He actually came on the show starting in season 4, and he is an angel. Um, and his true vessel, the one he inhabits the most in the show, is Jimmy Novak. But he has also possessed Claire Novak briefly,
Okay.
who is Jimmy's daughter. And he also had an unnamed female vessel he inhabited in the early 1900s.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that was a part of the Novak line because
That
they
would
kind
make
of,
sense.
keep them
Yeah.
you know, the same line. But the vessel is never actually given a name. So we don't actually know her name. We don't
Mm-hmm.
really know what happens to her. Just at some point, she was depossessed by Castiel and she either died or, something.
Yeah. Well, then,
Um,
so how does that work? See, he's inhabiting a man for most of the time when he's on the show,
mhm.
but he can also inhabit a female. So does the angel have a gender, or does it just kind of take on the gender of the
I think
vessel?
angels are supposed to be agender because even in the show at one point, um, that one of the angels actually says, humans assign gender to our names.
I see.
So
Okay.
angels like Gabriel were assumed to be male, and then say an
Mm-hmm.
angel like Hannah was assumed to be female, but that's not
Okay.
always necessarily the case. So
Right,
I
right.
think they're technically considered agender, but
Yeah.
possibly gender queer or gender fluid because they can, obviously inhabit a male
Sure.
or female vessel with ease.
Yeah. Right, right. Okay. So when they're not inhabiting a body, they have no gender, and then when
Yeah,
they inhabit a body, then I mean humans would have no choice but to assume they have the gender of the body they're inhabiting.
yeah,
Okay. That is interesting though. Okay. So
yeah,
those are you're
yeah,
saying the three main characters. So we
yes.
talked about Dean is played by Jensen Ackles. Sam was played by who now?
Jared Padalecki.
Jared Padalecki.
Some
Yeah.
might know him as playing Dean from Gilmore Girls. So
Yeah,
that
yep,
might be a
yep.
little confusing for my Gilmore Girls fans. But
That for me it is a little just because yeah, I like binged Gilmore Girls. And then so he's Dean to me, and so I see him and I'm
yeah,
like, that's what? And so he's the real tall one.
yes,
Yeah,
he
he's
kind
the
of
real
dwarfs
tall one.
everybody. And
He
then the actor who plays Castiel the most, or Castiel's vessel, Jimmy Novak,
uh-huh.
is Misha Collins.
Okay.
And you might know him. He's been in a couple of different things. He was in, I believe, Baywatch. He had a little bit part in Girl Interrupted, but he's done kind of lots of little things here and
Sure.
there.
Okay. But most commonly known for probably this role in Supernatural.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely, definitely. I don't think probably too many people remember the Baywatch.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been way back in the day probably.
Oh yeah.
So, okay. All right, so then how about some recurring minor characters that, they have like a big sway on the show? You've already mentioned a couple, I think, like the parents of Sam and Dean. Um,
Yeah, that's John Winchester was their father, and he's actually played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who some people might know as Negan from The Walking Dead.
okay, you know
But
what? I
he
thought he
actually,
was a crossover. I keep picturing a guy that just started in The Walking Dead, and is that the guy who came in recently in The Walking Dead? Is this
he
same?
was fairly recently,
Yeah,
but I
like a
think
few
at
seasons
least a
back.
season or so since he started.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I don't watch Walking Dead either. Because again, the horror scariness thing is like not my deal. But I thought he looked familiar. So that's the same actor.
Yes, that is the
Okay.
same actor. But when he was on Supernatural first, and obviously he's kind of, a lot younger on Supernatural.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
he comes back on The Walking Dead and he's got this nice, gray hair and facial hair going on
Mm-hmm.
here. Whereas in Supernatural, he just kind of had the dark hair and the clean shaven and
Yeah.
everything like that.
Yep. Okay. And he was a hunter, raised the boys to be hunters as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right. And then the mom is Mary, right? I'm
Uh-huh.
remembering.
And
Okay.
yeah, and she was obviously, having her, she was basically just the mother to the boys. She obviously spent a lot more time with Dean because he was the oldest,
Yeah.
and she didn't get as much time with Sam.
Yeah.
Um, so you don't actually, see too much of her in the show. There's some flashback episodes. There's
Okay.
actually episodes where the boys actually travel back in time and meet her.
Oh.
Um,
Like
although her memory,
before she had
yeah,
them,
like
or
before they
oh.
were born or anything like that. So, um, it the show is kind of interesting how they bring in characters who they might have they might have died or something might have happened to them, but they still end up coming back in some form or another.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's kind of cool. Like with this type of show, you can do that. You have the freedom to either go back in time or maybe, through connecting with an angel, you can like see a vision of the past or something like that. Or I've even heard of, characters in the show being resurrected and stuff. So,
Hmm.
that is kind of an interesting aspect where it's like, well, they died, but maybe they're not dead forever. So,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
not always, definitely not always dead forever.
Yeah. And she is played by is she anybody worth not worth necessarily. I'm sure she is a person worth noting, but is she anybody that we might have heard of before?
Her name, well, she's portrayed by the actress Samantha Smith.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody has heard of her. She was briefly in Jerry Maguire. She's done some work on like Rizzolian Isles and Criminal Minds.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
just kind of, little
She's
things
around.
here and there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some other characters then other than the Winchester family? Some other recurring characters, maybe fan favorites or what people we might have heard of without actually having seen the show?
Well, you've probably definitely heard of Bobby Singer. He's kind of what most would probably consider the grumpy uncle of the group. But he's actually kind of more or less a surrogate father to the boys. He did get to watch them several times when they were growing up, and he always treated them more as children and not as hunters so
Okay.
much. There's actually one point where there's a flashback where Bobby was taking Dean out to a park, and Dean tells him, but Dad said I was supposed to be, shooting or learning shooting or whatever. And Bobby was like, well, today you're going to be playing catch. And so he, just takes them out
Nice.
to the park and plays catch and just treats them like, normal kids.
Oh,
And
yeah.
kind of more of a father to them than John ever was, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, if
Because,
John was a very avid hunter, then he probably wouldn't have been around a lot, or he would have been trying to move the kids with him, and that wouldn't have been any way to do anything, I feel like.
oh yeah, I mean, he definitely, he did move them around a lot. But there was a few people that they did end up staying with, and Bobby was probably one of the biggest ones. Um, and he was also a fellow hunter, so I mean, he understood the life. He understood what was going on and what they
Yeah.
really needed to know, but he understood also at the same time that the boys needed to be boys.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Which
they
is
just needed to be
awesome.
kids.
I mean, it's good that that the boys could have that in their lives too. So that's a cool side character, I guess. I mean, it's
Oh,
good because it
definitely.
helps us understand the boys a little bit more too, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. And he's portrayed by Jim Beaver, who is a really awesome, cool dude. You might have seen him in Deadwood or Breaking Bad or something like that.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. I haven't seen those shows, but maybe somebody else has. So cool. So that's Bobby Singer. All right. Who else
mhm.
do you have?
Jody Mills, she is the sheriff in the town that Bobby lives in. She's initially not a hunter, or she's not clued into, the supernatural world, but during the course of the show, she becomes acquainted with it and she adapts because, she realizes that, something does need to be done in certain situations. But she really values her work as a sheriff. So instead of just going out hunting, she actually uses her role as a sheriff to kind of help the boys out.
Awesome.
She might call them with a case that they might need to look at. She might doctor up some paperwork if they need to. She might take some heat off of them
Mm,
if they need that. So she kind of supports them in that way.
that's awesome. That's a really handy person to have in your back pocket. I mean,
Oh, definitely, definitely.
like, super handy. I mean, it also helps them stay under the radar as far as like towns go and stuff, because the more that people know about what's going on, I feel like again, the more people are at risk. And so,
Oh,
you know,
definitely.
keeping it under the radar is probably better for more people all around. So
Oh,
awesome.
yeah, definitely. Because people, and it's kind of, a given that people in general aren't really ready to know about the supernatural. And so, it's kind of important just to
Yeah.
keep things under wraps and just take care of them as they come instead of,
Yeah.
exposing this whole world.
Exactly. It's like it would be way too much because people would freak out and mass chaos, and that would be a very bad thing. Awesome. That's all the characters we have time for today. But thank you so much, Elisabeth, for being on the show with me and getting nerdy with us. I'm so glad that you could be with us on this episode. Tune in next time for an advanced edition of Supernatural. We'll also have Lindsay joining us. So Elisabeth, Lindsay, and I will all be together on one episode. So that's going to be pretty great. Go ahead and talk nerdy to us, though. Let us know, maybe, did this help you decide whether you want to watch Supernatural or not? Let us know on our social media pages. We've got a Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. Just go ahead and search Beauties and Headcanons on there and you'll find us. Also, go ahead and subscribe to this podcast and others from Public House Media on iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and other platforms where great podcasts are found. We love feedback, so if you liked this episode, or even if you didn't, go ahead and give us a review and a rating so that we can keep making great episodes for you. I'm Emily, and thanks for getting nerdy with us on Beauties and Headcanons.